I'd also just like to highlight here very quickly that there are 6 question types that contribute to the writing scores. So your students are effectively written text, summarized spoken text, and we're going to dive deeper into write email. We are not going to be looking at the other 3 question types where the writing responses are very short in their requirement. So questions like reading and writing, fill in the blanks, listening, fill in the blanks, and write from dictation, those are not the question types that we are looking at. We are only looking at question types where the responses are extended. So once again, let's do a quick overview. What each level can actually do in terms of these 3 questions for summarize spoken text, summarize written text, and write email. This is your reference slide again for all 3 across the 3 levels. Keep this slide as a resource, please. We are going to focus on write email today. This is because this question type is where the CLB level shows up most clearly. And this is where the decisions that are made in terms of scoring are the widest. They have the biggest spectrum. So we'll be focusing on that today. Once again, we're following the same structure that we looked at earlier. So I'm going to show you a prompt here on the screen. And we are going to look at 3 different levels of response for CLB 7, 8, and 9. As we go through these 3 responses, I would like you to think about which one are your students most often producing or are most likely to produce. You see? And the third is a way to raise money at the event. So once again, before we start looking at the responses, think about which one of these are your students most often producing. We've got the first one here for CLB 7. Right, so we saw the prompt in the previous slide. For the CLB 7 response, what we see here is that all 3 themes are addressed. So we saw 3 bullet points, those are addressed here. However, the supporting ideas are a bit limited. The register, the tone seems appropriate. There is a clear salutation, there is a clear sign-off at the end. The vocabulary is also relevant to the prompt, but once again, it's functional vocabulary. It's a bit limited in range. The ideas are stated, but they are not developed because there's not a lot of elaboration. So as someone has mentioned in the chat, it's very to the point. There's no reasoning that has been provided. So this answer remains at a CLB 7. Now let's look at the CLB 8 response. What you will see here is that once again, all the 3 themes have been addressed. There is a bit more elaboration in this answer as well. So the ideas are not simply listed or mentioned, they are also developed a bit more. Have a look at the phrases. To ensure the music at the concert is varied. Or this would allow people who couldn't attend to contribute to the charity. So instead of just mentioning that there should be local bands, or there could be local bands. And instead of just mentioning that we could have a link for donation, it also elaborates or provides a reason. The reason is built into the response. Once again, the other things that were important for an email are present. So there's a clear salutation, a clear sign-off. The response now seems a bit more elaborate. The register once again is consistent right from the beginning to the end. There are some complex structures in terms of language or grammar that we see here. We also see a little bit more of an example here, a little bit more elaboration. For example, this point where they talk about creating a short video of the event highlights with a link to the donation page. That shows that there's more analytical thinking. So it's not just an idea, it's also talking about why this would work. And overall, the response is quite coherent. Now let's take a look at the CLB9 response. For this response, what you will notice is that the register is quite precise, it's consistent throughout the response. Again, all three themes have been mentioned, but not just that, they have now been developed in more detail. There's more of a clear justification. There's more evidence or examples for all of them. The sentence structures have more of a range. They appear more natural. And the tone overall is quite warm. The writer has also considered the reader's perspective. So they've offered a bit of an option, or they've offered flexibility in some cases. For example, where they talk about things like, I would be honored to contribute in whatever way is most useful, though I'm equally happy to do this if this doesn't work for you. So there's more understanding of the task, there's more development of the ideas, and the register is consistent throughout. Which of these three types of responses are your students most often producing now, everyone? And what does that tell you about develop? There's not much elaboration. There's no evidence to support it. There might be less nuance. There might be less social awareness. The structure could be clear, but there could be limitations in terms of the vocabulary or the cohesive devices that they're using. So what you are going to be teaching for at this point is, of course, to follow the structure of the email and make sure that the task is complete, because that's paramount. But also then teach to push the range of vocabulary so that they are able to get to the next score bracket. And also work on precision in terms of register. So when we talk about register being formal, informal, or semi-formal, it doesn't always fall broadly in these three categories. There could be shades between that. So it's always really important to consider the relationship. As we saw in response to a situation, writing an email also requires an understanding of who we are writing to. And what we are writing about. So what type of context are we talking in? That can affect a lot of the choices that we make for vocabulary. If your students, as some of you have mentioned, are producing answers at a CLB 8 level, that means that there is some elaboration, there's some reasoning for the ideas. The register once again is consistent. Their email is consistent and coherent, not just each paragraph on its own, but it's reading cohesively and coherently overall, from start to end. So here what you can teach for to push them into the next score bracket is to talk about the why behind each point. So more elaboration, giving more of his reasoning, supporting their point with some detail, and not just describing what's happening or what could happen, to also show more analysis, to show more of an understanding in depth. And if you'd like them, of course, to produce answers at the CLB 9 level, then consider teaching for more precision in terms of tone, and to be more aware of what the reader's perspective might be, because writing is not isolated in that manner. It's not just about what I as the writer want to say. It's also very much dependent on what the reader might need or how they might perceive it. So it's very important to consider the reader at every step while writing. So anticipating the need prompt on the screen and a response. We're doing the same thing that we did earlier. I'm going to give you a minute. And I'd like you to read the email and then tell me which CLB level would you consider this, and what are your two strongest clues for choosing this.